It's the mic for the speakers. Try it to see it, make sure it's working.
Hello? Yeah? Okay. Right. Just let the last few people come through. Okay, well, thank you very much, everybody, for coming over here today, and for Paula for organising the meeting and inviting me down. This is the first talk I think I've done since October, maybe November last year. So quite a few people will be aware of what's been happening with WearBank. Everybody heard of WearBank?
Yes.
Anybody not? Okay, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Any more? On 5, 6. Keep it going. No. Okay, so there's 6 people who haven't heard about it. How many have joined WearBank or Removement? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. Okay. So what I'm proposing to do today, the reason I've come down today, made this deliberate effort to come down, even though I'm sharing this platform with Rob and with Guy and Mark, are you speaking or anything? And this gentleman over here. I've come down to try and explain to people face to face sort of what's happened, where we are at the moment, which is very good news for the next coming week, and then hopefully to answer some questions. So I'm going to try and keep it relatively short. The history and the situation over the last year has been quite interesting, and there's a limit to how much you can put on a video, because once a video starts to get past maybe 10 or 15 minutes, then people aren't really going to pay too much attention. So there's possibly some good news on the horizon. Maybe Tom is going to touch on some of the progression that's maybe involved with his case. I think Michael of Benicia has also been faring quite well in the courts, for anyone who's been following that. The situation, therefore, with WearBank was that I think it was April the 13th or April the 17th last year, we launched something called WearBank, which is a people's bank. The idea behind that was predominantly to show people how to alleviate the strictures of what we'd be calling, let's say, Babylonian debt slavery, and this mechanism that we've all been welded into, which says that you have to pay these particular types of debt on what's called the public side of the ledger. So the public side of the ledger is in effect the area that we were all pushed into after, say, 1931, when the United Kingdom was in effect bankrupted in the United States in 1933, and from that point on the gold standard was removed, so you couldn't pay on the private side in anything other than Bank of England notes. So everybody's aware that the Bank of England note that you will have in your pocket, if I haven't, I don't have one in mine, is nothing but a promissory note. Yeah, if you've got one, you can look at it now. It says, I promise to pay the bearer on demand the sum of. So the structure of the Bills of Exchange Act is the underlying, should we say, groundwork for the entire financial commercial system in the United Kingdom, and then in turn onto the world. So whether people are in Australia, whether in New Zealand or Canada or the United States, the American Bar Association is part of the Bar Association of England and Wales, and so the entire structure is connected. Then it ties in part with something called Uniform Commercial Code, which maybe people have heard of, but this overall method of corporations extracting money from people is the root of the degree of debt. So with 19 trillion worth of debt in the United States, with the United Kingdom being in about maybe just under 2 trillion in debt, most of the other countries in the world in debt, what we can see is a financial system that inherently does not work.
Has anybody ordered any skinny fries?
I just paused at the right time there. So the situation with the game, the money go round game, is that it is impossible for you, people as a collective, to keep ahead of the game. And the equation that dictates that is something called P is less than P plus I. So the principal is always going to be less than the principal plus interest, which means that every note that is manufactured by a central bank has to have another note immediately following it to pay for the interest on the previous one. Then what we have is the money goes out into what used to be called MO, M1, M2 and M3, which they don't touch on too much these days. And in effect that money goes and, shall we say, bifurcates, I think that's a word, and it gets lost in the system. So what it means is all that money cannot circulate back in. So what that means is that there's always a definite number of people within the system that have to go bankrupt by definition because there's not enough money in the money supply for them to get enough to pay. It's the same phenomenon as going to a Las Vegas casino, or any casino in fact. The house will always win eventually. So if you keep coming back, you will lose because it's nothing more than a numbers game. So the idea was to set up a bank under common law. The common law aspect of banking is that you, as individuals, have the right to be bankers. Just as you've got the right to be a gardener, and you've got the right to be a teacher, and you've got the right to be a plumber, or someone's got the right to be a chef or a cook. Yeah? There is no regulation on that, apart from if you want to possibly these days go and work in a hotel. You might have to have an NVQ in something to know which coloured chopping boards to use. But banking and prostitution, for example, are two of the oldest professions on the planet, and no one really needs permission or authority from the state to do it. So, if that is correct, and if you look at the Bills of Exchange Act at the very, very beginning, the beginning sections, they define that a bank, under the Bills of Exchange Act, is a body of people incorporated or other. That means it doesn't have to be a corporation. It can be a set of private individuals conducting the business of banking. So what is the definition of banking? It's taking money out of your pocket, lending it to somebody, receiving it back, and having a financial accounting system that can show a paper trail. And once those aspects are achieved, you have, in effect, a bank. So, what We Are Bank was set up to do was to utilize the phenomenon of the promise. And the only thing that exists in the world, money really doesn't exist. The only thing that's ever paid for goods and services are other goods and services. So money just acts as the medium of exchange between people. And if, for example, I now and this gentleman agree to exchange that notepad there, if he would agree to exchange that for that glass of water, then we have a deal between us on the private side. However, in the corporatocracy, in the privateering global estate that's been set up to keep us all under check, we have to go to the central bank to get these notes to exchange within our community. And this is why this notion of legal tender is offered. The idea with legal tender is that the debtor is obligated to accept legal tender for the satisfaction of a debt. On the private side, or should we say inverted commas the private side, the checkout girl at Morrison's isn't obliged to take the notes from you because the vendor can specify what actually he wants. He could say he'll only take a credit card, he could say I only want silver coins, and so. So that's the overall tenor of why We Are Bank was set up. To, instead of you going to the high street bank and persuading the bank manager to give you a loan, whereby they'll make you jump through every hoop that you could possibly imagine that you had to jump through to prove that you had the ability to energetically pay off this loan over time, What we said, in effect, is why go to the high street bank? Why not just be your own banker? And how you became your own banker was to sign your own promissory note, which in effect gave the money to you. It was a promise to yourself. So that's totally analogous to you going into the bank, you asking for a loan. The bank says, yes, we've agreed the loan. Then you sign a particular document saying, I agree to pay NatWest or Barclays or Halifax Building Society the amount of the loan plus interest over 25 years or 5 years or 10 years. There is no difference in the promises. So for anybody that's experienced the rejection of one of the checks, the idea is that if there are degrees of promise, then that's a new thing in the world of human interaction. A promise from one person to another is a promise. And it doesn't matter whether you make the promise to NatWest or Barclays, or whether you make the promise to Weir Bank, or in effect yourself, you've got the same promise. So if milk comes from a cow, it's milk if it comes from an Argentinian cow, and it's milk if it comes off a cow in Tunbridge Wells. So that's the discussion here. So when Weir Bank was set up, everybody said it wouldn't last. We're coming up to 1 year now, and for the record, I have not had a telephone call from any regulatory authority, from any legal department connected with any government agency, and I have had no connection with any sort of abuse apart from one or two heads of legal departments which were at NatWest in London, Barclays in London, in the early days, making all sorts of threats as to why it wasn't allowed to continue. So that was the situation, and that was running very, very well. The UK obviously was where we started. After the UK, it became very, very, very incredibly active in Ireland, then in Canada, then the United States, and now in Germany, Austria, Switzerland, and we've got exposure in about 50 countries worldwide. Things were going very, very well up until about just before Christmas, January. And what has happened there is that an individual who was working for us, who was in charge of the database and the IT, a guy called David, St Mary's Street, Painswick in Gloucestershire, GL66QB. Oh, I shouldn't have said that maybe. I hope this isn't going public. He is the one that's primarily responsible for trying to bring Weir Bank to extinction. Him and his son had been colluding to actually take the database to deal with people in the United States and in effect to hijack the entire operation, and his promise to the so-called hub leaders that were juiced in America, that the contributions that people would be making on a monthly basis to removement, he was actually promising them 50% of the take, whereas at the same time professing that he was the adjudicator to see the Weir Bank was maintained under a common law tenet, and that the one man, one vote scenario, as he said, was legitimate. But the problem with the one man, one vote scenario in democracy is that if the majority of us all here now decide we're going to eat you, you haven't got much of a say in it, have you? So
you want to bet?
Yeah. Well, yeah, actually, maybe someone a bit smaller.
I'll take some with it.
I don't think they could finish the whole portion.
Take a few sittings.
So this is the type of jargon, and this is the type of rhetoric that was used to try and destabilise. We have 12,000 registrants. We have about 5,000 to 6,000 active members. You can do the maths on what funds would have come through to us over the last year, And then where we say it costs us £10 for every book we post out, it costs us £5 to produce the book. Then we've got the payments for the people who are doing the work. You can actually do the maths after if you're playing back on the video. So all these rumours that, like one guy in Austria is maintaining that, you know, we brought in 7.5 million in the last year. Other people making all sorts of incredible claims. It's not true at all. Of course, I'm not too well dressed, but well dressed enough. So that was the situation. So what we had a problem with this at the beginning of, well, actually in the summer of last year. And one of the key issues that promulgated this final attack by these people was that what we wanted to do is we wanted to have the usernames and the passwords and the domain name of WearBank given to an independent IT company, so that if anything happened to any of the people involved in it, it could continue. We repeatedly asked for that to happen, and there were excuses made continuously as to why it couldn't happen. And in the end, what we found out is, instead of the domain names being registered to myself, who did to do so, we found that he'd registered them or changed the names into his own and hid them behind some identity protection. Also, anyone might have been going on to wearbank.com over the last few weeks might have seen that it's been redirected to Knights Templar International. Anybody aware of that?
No, nothing there now.
Yeah, it's gone because I complained to the Grand Priory, and I complained to the Knights Templar for England and Wales, and I phoned Rosalind Sanctuary. Actually, so Knights Templar International say it's they're overseen by Rosalind Sanctuary, which no such name exists. It's Rosalind Priory. So what he was even doing to the very nth degree was redirecting our domain name, probably for money, to this Knights Templar organisation for some reason. So the result of us then finding out and giving this individual this ultimatum was that he held us to ransom for the database. First he wanted just his salary, then he wanted £50 for every individual who he said had agreed through some rigged vote to come across to his new operation. So we refused to pay, and in effect what he did then is he completely sabotaged the database and refused to hand anything back. So we could not clear the items that were coming in through the faxes. We had no access to certain parts of the website, and so for the last 6 weeks we have been trying to rebuild. And so,
Peter, did anyone go over to him or not?
no, I believe he's still living, as they say, and I hope he continues a long and happy life, because that's just the way I am, you know. But eventually I'm sure he will see sense, but that doesn't matter now, because we're moving on, and we've got wearbank.co.uk. Go and have a look at that. The registration form will be online hopefully by Monday, and then we have a complete new registration platform ready for everyone as of sometime next week. So that's the situation that we're in at the moment. So for people who weren't aware of that, that's what's happened. We've had a very, very long, I suppose you could call it, fight. But the people eventually that have done us more harm than the government, the security services, the agents of banking, are people that we were working with, yeah, mistakenly with judgment there or otherwise. But that's the situation at the moment. And for those people who don't know so much about the operation, I'm not going to carry on in too much detail now, because I have spoken for 3 hours before, but today I'm deliberately keeping it short. So what I'm going to do is just say to you that WearBank is still operational, very much so, and stronger than ever. For those people who doubt it, and then there was the landlord that came in today and said that some strange email had been sent to this pub to state that they shouldn't allow me to speak because I was responsible for people losing their homes and people having their cars repossessed, everything you could imagine. the bottom line here is it's coming up to we're into our second calendar year, and we'll soon, in 4 weeks, be coming up to our anniversary. If there'd been something that they could have done to legitimately stop us by now, I assure you they would have done. And there isn't anything they can do. Just as a reassurance for anybody who has had a cheque returned that they've sent to pay for a debt or to pay for anything else. The Financial Compliance Authority in the UK admit that the promissory note is ring-fenced and as good an instrument as you could imagine. The Financial Compliance Authority in the Channel Islands also. The New Zealand Ombudsman has warned people that signing of such an instrument might have grave implications if Weir Bank decides to call in that note in the future. Okay? We've also had Judge Slosser, not sure, he was a master in chambers in the Court of Appeal in Canada, also stipulate that the promissory notes are viable financial instruments. So, if the cow is good, the milk that comes out is also... Billy Connolly. Billy. Okay.
Sorry, you're a bit late from one.
No problem. So, the idea behind this is, a friend of mine this morning said, I've just had this returned from Halifax, Halifax Card Services. I've just sent in a cheque for $6,760 something to pay my credit card debt off, and what they've done is they've just said they can't accept it, they're sorry to say, because Weir Bank is not part of UK clearing. That's it, UK clearing. UK clearing is just a private club, and what we've had is many instances of cheques being cleared, and I've stipulated it time and time again, the thing is more cheques out there, not fewer. And people should not get disheartened just by the fact that the local council is returning your cheque, or the bank has said that they won't clear the mortgage for it. There is only one type of promise, and that would stand up in any court of law unless the judge can actually say that the promise that you give to the bank manager sitting in the bank manager's office is a completely different promise than the one that you've issued to Weir Bank to actually verify and create the funds. So the bottom line is, for anybody that has issued a cheque, or in some countries now they're called LLTs, lawful and legal tender, to cover the public and the common law side, the statement there is that if there are funds available and the payee bank is refusing to ask for them, what is going on? Because under Article 101 of the Treaty or Convention on the European Rules of Regulation, I think it's called, used to be called the Treaty of Rome. How are we doing? It stipulates that there is to be no monopolistic behaviour, collusion or cartel or market rigging within the European Union. Now, Weir Bank is like Pepsi, and Bank of England and all the high street banks are like Coca-Cola. It's Cola Wars, yeah? It's no different than Mercedes-Benz adjudicating as to whether BMW is allowed to sell its cars in Bavaria. And this is the ultimate argument which they can't combat, because you have the right to breathe, you have the right to go to the toilet, you have the right to cook food, to garden, to drive, to teach, to paint, and you have the right to bank. And that's what Weir Bank is actually providing. It's providing the tree for the birds to roost in, to become individual bankers within a service provision, an umbrella. A lot of people aren't aware of all aspects to it, but fundamentally that's the bottom line. That it's not a revolution on the street, you don't need to wear t-shirts, you don't need to stay and run down the street with banners and write into the MPs. The idea is to change it with a cheque and a pen. And apart from that, there is not much of an alternative, I don't think, because the regimes that are in place are steel belted, and they are as arrogant and lie to the extent that they would bend iron bars with these lies. So there isn't going to be a change through the ballot box. Democracy is not an option for you, otherwise it would have worked possibly by now. And the overall stance from anyone that's conducting business and making adjudication requests to the Ombudsman or to any financial regulatory authority is, if they are overseeing the catastrophe that is the debt slavery system that operates globally, with everyone now working 50 hours a week, two parents working, and there still is not enough, and we're told now you'll have to work till you're dead before you'll even get your pension, and on, then please just go away. You have a vested interest in keeping us in an area that we really don't want to be in. So that's as good as I'll say to that. What I'm going to do is just round that off now with some questions. So any questions of anyone will be back right after the break, or the click. First of all, are there any people here working for the security services in a covert manner or overt manner? Not that you put your hand up anyway. No. Okay. Right. So I would just say, okay, yeah. Right. So let's go with some questions. The nastier the better. I can do them all. Okay. So let's go. I'll just work.
Let's keep it down
Okay, hang
to
on.
questions.
Okay.
As you know, being in court with this, I was dealing with you the other week and I went to the Court of Appeal. Now, we've got a problem with enforcement.
Is this Stuart?
It is, yeah.
Hi, Stuart.
Now, we've got a problem with enforcement of the checks. Now, what was your answer to this? Because unfortunately, it's like paper airplanes at the moment if you're in hot water. So, what they've decided was Section 42, 43 don't apply to a check unless you can prove damages. Section 73 and 74 apply. So all you can claim is loss of interest, the cost of the paper the check's on, which is negligible. Yeah. It is near impossible now to enforce those checks with a Court of Appeal rule now standing as precedent.
Okay.
So,
well, I don't think we're going to get that.
It was proven that the bank is legitimate.
Yeah.
The money was a fiction. They agreed both sides. But, you know, the other banks were issuing fictitious money. What they nailed us on was you can't enforce a check unless you can prove your damages. Now this is where we're at now, so how are we going to deal with this?
Okay, right. So the first thing is, I'll keep it short as I can. There's two different areas and two different arguments. One, it's the proof of funds. Yeah, and the proof of funds are, is there any money in Weir Bank or not, or do you have access to that on the account? If they would claim that that is not the case, then they need to look at 2014 Q1 2014 Bank of England instruction on monetary reform and the nature of money. It explains it quite adequately there, that the moment you actually sign something, it creates money, not like we thought before, where you had to have money in the account first before you could loan it. The other point on that then becomes the nature of a check, because we've also gone down this avenue to try and convince people to see the validity of this thing called Yalta. I did a take on 1946 Yalta Agreement. So the nature of legal tender and whether it has to be accepted. The banks would say, or the Financial Compliance Authority would say, there is no obligation for anyone to accept a check, because a check is not legal tender and never has been. Yes, if it was a check, but there's a difference between a check and a teller's check or a banker's draft or a cashier's check, I think it's called in various places. In Germany, for example, they are against the law full stop, because they were always thought as being a threat to the money supply. Because if you're walking around with a certified check or a banker's check, then it's in effect as good as money. So the selective conclusioning that they use in the court system has to be, they'll find anything that they can to hook their hat on, because the moment that they allow one to go through officially, the game's over. So the amount of subterfuge, the amount of trickery, the amount of, smoke and mirrors that they adopt is a complexity that removes us from the simplicity of
is the nature of the discussion here about money. Do they want money or don't they? We say we have it, they've got to ask for it. And if they won't ask for it, the conclusion has to be, why not? So they're either what do you call it? They're either biased in some way, which we all know why they are, because they control the game, or there's some other reason. And there isn't much more of a reason than that. The fact that they are deliberately not approaching us to ask for the clearing. Then the other part of it is, we then acknowledge that we cleared it to them, but they refuse to accept it, because it hasn't come down the right type of pipe. Yeah, they want a 2-inch diameter pipe, and we're sending it down a 3-inch, or they want it down a red pipe called Swift, we're sending it down a blue one called something else. So to forensically take that apart, the nature of the argument should always be, were you in honour? Were you making the effort to try and get funds to them? And if the judge was impartial, the judge should just be able to do one thing only and say, you run a bank, you've had a cheque put in your hand, and you don't know what to do with it. All they've got to do is to send it to us, and then. But they're stipulating that we've rejected the cheques. That people have said, oh well, it was returned by Weirbank, and Weirbank said it was fraudulent. I mean, you know, why would we do that? You know, that's defeating yourself on your own field. So hopefully, I've answered as much of that as we can do here now. But the bottom line is, if it was genuine and you had a caring, compassionate, independent banking commercial system overseen by a legitimate legal system or law system, you wouldn't have a problem at all. But as we don't have it, you're not going to get it. And the only way you're going to get it is by coming together in groups and using things like creative dissent. Get 10 of you together, go down to the same bank, present it one after the other, tie them up at the teller window. Have the banking staff so nervous that they don't want to come into work on a Monday or a Wednesday. You know, it's called creative dissent. There used to be a Peace Prize sort of for it. I think it's called, no, not Peace Prize, the Vakal Havel Peace Prize. Well, not Peace Prize, but for creative dissent. So that's what needs to be done, and we've just got to get more agitated with them. Miranda.
Yeah, what I'm interested in is, I've had one cheque passed last August, which was for £35 for a parking traffic ticket, and that's by my Tunbridge Wells Borough Council, and they accepted it, yeah? Only last week I wrote to them and said, just for my records, could you please send me a receipt for this payment that I paid you back in August, and I gave them the NCPN, and I've got that, and I've got it. So I have proof they accepted a Weirbank cheque.
Yeah.
Now what I'm interested in is, who do they bank with? Do they bank with NatWest or whoever? Because whoever that was allowed that to happen.
Yeah.
So in a sense, we've got a precedent.
Yeah.
Because I now want to go to, because what's happened is I sent a cheque for £35,000 to my mortgage, Santander, back in May last year. At the time my mortgage was in credit, so I didn't hear anything till June or July, and then they said, you haven't paid your mortgage. And I said, well, why would I? I sent you an entire settlement figure. I'm not intending on paying you any more of my mortgage. I've paid it. No, you haven't. No, you haven't. Eventually, I got them to admit that they had received a cheque from me. That was in May. It's gone on and on and on and on. I've been complaining, and I've said, okay, if you're not happy, just return my cheque, and I will carry on paying my monthly mortgage payments. I'm quite happy to do that. That's my property. Send me my cheque back. As of 2 weeks ago, they got the solicitors involved because now they want to try and take my flat away from me. But what is interesting is got onto them again, and I said, look, we can clear this up tomorrow. I only owe you £1,000. I will pay my mortgage, just return my cheque. And I've now been told that my cheque was destroyed. And I said, I beg your pardon, how dare you?
That happened to me as well.
That's my property. But I then said, could you please tell me when did this happen? Because I've been asking for my cheque back for 9 months. When was this done? And they said, oh, in May last year. So now I'm getting them on, I've taken to the ombudsman, and I'm getting them on harassment letters, being ridiculous. And why couldn't they
And
tell
also,
me
yeah.
9 months ago?
Also, you could bring a case under civil civil law for what's called trespass, trespass and
yeah.
conversion for their use and enjoyment. Plus, you need to try and find out, did they actually destroy it or did they monetize it? Because none of those checks were account payee-only. There was deliberately no lines across or diagonally across them. So in many instances they have been monetized, and many people have sent me documentation to prove that accounts have been zeroed internally, because when they've had these various final notices and demands, people have inadvertently copied different pages out of different credit files, and it shows two simultaneous running accounts. One could be 1001601, the other's 100602, running down. One's cleared, but the other one that they're collecting on, for some reason, is still showing a liability. So
Okay.
that's a point. And also, that if the instrument's got a value, then it's got the value of what was written on it.
Yeah.
We could
Just
maintain.
remember one other thing, whilst the county or something is in dispute, they can't take it to court.
Oh no, and I'm not even scared, because as far as I'm concerned, they've done malpractice, and I've also said, well, I want written or visual proof that my cheque was destroyed. And
Yeah, and also another...
Protect your property, right?
Yeah.
And I don't care what you're saying here with all this stuff about it's all going through.
Right.
If your accounts aren't showing they've already monetised and take stuff out, which you aren't doing, isn't there?
Hey.
This is nonsense, man. I'm telling you. Start paying your mortgage or you're going to lose your property.
Oh,
and
excellent.
I'm
So
not
we
going
have
for the
a-
scheme or anything. I'm telling
So-
you, you're causing harm and distress to all sorts
so
of people.
are you
It's about
the-
time other people started saying it.
Are you the chap who sent the email?
No, I sent no email at all.
Ah.
Ever. I've had no contact with you and I never will.
Yeah.
I'll tell you now.
So
you're
what are you here for? What are you here for?
I'm here for many other things. Because
Yeah,
I'm
for
sick
what?
of hearing people.
Yeah, well, we don't want to listen to you if you're here to disrupt it.
I'm not to disrupt it, but I'm telling you, you are acting dishonestly.
How?
You're not backing
How?
other people up.
How?
You're not turning up when people need you in court, apparently, where you're going to. In the same,
How many times
in the
can I
same
turn
way-
up in court?
in
How
the
many
same way
times?
with Stu, eh? Was you
Are
there
you
with him?
together?
Was you helping him?
Are you with each other?
Yeah, I'm with Stu.
Okay. So what did he say? He wanted me to go up
No,
to
listen to that.
to
It's the only
Scotland.
thing you can ever claim for is the value of your piece of paper that you've gone through, nothing else. You're trying to encourage people to put
No.
themselves into predicaments where they're going to end up on the streets like many other people it's happened to. You
So
know what? It isn't the way forward.
Okay. So with me, yeah, they end up on the street.
They are doing, yeah.
Without
If
me,
he carries on doing the
Hang
same
on.
things, exactly the same is going to happen again.
with me they end up on the street. With or without. Look what happened to Tom.
Was you in arrears before you tried this? Well, there you go, I rest my case.
What? Just because she was...
Everybody takes their own chance on a mortgage.
Of course they do.
Well, no,
Yeah.
hang on.
Of course
Because
we do.
before even Weirbank got involved, my property got stolen with only 2 years on the mortgage. We all take our chance
My
when we
friend's
do
property
it.
was taken
right?
over and
But
it
you can't come here.
was taken
You
over. I
can't
can
come
come
here
here.
Yeah.
and start slating.
Yeah, and
people,
listen,
right?
what I
If everybody
suggest,
takes their
fella,
own chance.
Let me just say something here. My mate's property was taken over an £8,000 car loan. He was going to come here today and talk you all through it. Russ McGarry, check you up. He'll tell you how it works.
Really?
Because he's had through it. I was no mortgage on that house.
Fortunate. You
What
made
do you
it.
want?
yeah.
It's all
if, okay, what I'd like to say then, if you find it so distasteful being
Why are you
here,
here?
why are you staying? Just to cause trouble?
No, I'm
I'll
here
be-
for the reasons, not for you.
I'll be finished in about 5
Right,
minutes.
carry on.
Alright, so if you could
What I'm
just...
saying is, you're
If-
giving this girl advice, right?
Yeah.
Who's going? I'm telling you now, they're going to come and take her property.
Okay, and if I wasn't here, and Weirbank wasn't
She
here,
wouldn't have
would
been
they
in
take...
arrears if she hadn't have followed your
Is
process.
anybody else here who's not with Weirbank that's having problems with bailiffs or card debt or any other type of debt at the moment? One person. Are you a member of Weirbank? No. There you go. So he's having problems. Is that it? One person. Tom. Because it's proving the point.
It's not proving any point.
Of course it is. It's proving the fact that this cycle goes on
So
whether
she's gonna
we're
have to
here or
keep her
not.
property with
Anyway, I'm
her
not
Weirbank
arguing
check.
with you. I'm not here to argue with you, heckler.
I do understand, Peter. I do understand banking.
Because
Because I'm involved in all this.
Involved as
I
what?
know you, Peter.
Is there anybody that's standing...
Tell this
Hang
guy,
on.
am I all right? Thank you. I live next to Rob.
Could I please say something?
Yeah.
I met this gentleman up at the at Tom's Pub. His name on Twitter is Gilgamesh.
Yeah.
Oh yeah.
And we had a great chat.
Yeah.
I wanted you to speak there, so you did. You had 5 minutes, which was fab. I'm not in Rebank at the moment, because I have a problem with registering with anything.
Yeah.
Because once I register, I hand over my responsibility. But this man and someone else with him attacked us online as trolls.
Yeah, I can imagine. And I'd just like to address the question.
You did. You were
didn't
in a
solve-
circle wagon. And I was
I
so
think we need
upset
some type of
because
adjudicator in here at the
You
moment.
see, we're all
You're
here
talking
for one
utter
reason.
nonsense.
We have one enemy, which is the system.
Exactly.
The
And
system
anybody,
is enslaving all of us.
anybody, and anybody I would suggest that is defending someone.
I'm not defending anybody, I'm
Hang on,
telling you.
hang on,
One at a time, please.
that tries to put a viable, provable system in operation and give you the choice freely to do it. You have to, you read the small print and you decide to go ahead.
Disrespect you, but you
Yeah.
could end up in a deeper hole if it goes wrong. That's my point.
Who could?
We're all
We
doing
could.
it.
You're all in a deeper hole.
The legal expenses trying to push this stuff through can just...
Everybody's doing it in other countries. It isn't as if it isn't as if I've scammed the planet.
I'm not trying to... No,
You know what I mean?
I'm not trying to say...
Anybody that says with no
people need to be
due respect.
aware that this hole could get a lot deeper if
Yeah.
it doesn't work.
And it's up to each one of us to
So what?
educate ourselves about what the problems are
I'm
and what the solutions might be.
You can get killed.
Right, calm it down now, right? It's like when you go and get out of debt free. We offer you how to use certain procedures, we give you template letters. Whether you use them or not is up to you. The buck stops with you. Nobody but you.
Agreed.
Now let's keep it.
Yeah, so, thank you. So, you just keep it to yourself.
I just want to say also, this room is full of people like myself that have been challenging the system before we'd even heard of Weird Bank, before we'd heard of getting out of debt free.
Since 9/11.
We were
Including me.
exactly, we were just outraged at what was happening to us, and we didn't need people like you to tell us to rebel.
Good. You don't need me.
You don't
I'm
understand.
just providing another horse for you to ride.
I don't
Okay, next
You
one.
don't understand it, no.
Peter, how's it?
Right.
Yeah.
I don't care. It's not his fault.
Yeah. Next one. Next
I've
friendly
been
one.
with Weird Bank since you started. I've had a few successes with you. I've got letters to prove it. If anybody wants proof, I've got letters dated from headed councils, other people. But you do have to do a bit of research yourself. And yeah, things go wrong. It's not your fault. Just sometimes things go wrong. But my question is, with what's gone on, what happens if we're already registered with Weird Bank? Do we need to register again? Or do we need to use more log-on details?
Yeah, the database will be imported as best it can into the new platform.
Yeah.
And it may be that we email certain people and suggest that they re-register if we don't have. So that will be going out as an email, and hopefully even this gentleman here will be
Yeah, so
getting one. So
log on
I
with
apologise
my-
now if you do get one, because they just go out to
Log on with
everyone.
my own info and call you if you can't.
Yeah, you'll have what we had on the
Yeah.
transaction record prior to the 26th, 27th
Yeah.
of January.
Okay.
Okay, right, next question.
Actually, I was going to say, I've got no problem with Weird Bank whatsoever.
Oh,
I really
good.
haven't.
Good. Neither is the government, neither has the Financial Compliance
The
Authority.
thing is though, Nottingham Council...
Only this gentleman seems to think I'm the answer to everybody's
Well, Nottingham City Council cashed my first cheque,
non.
and they didn't have a problem with that for over £2,000. Then, all of a sudden, they seem to have a problem saying it's something to do with the FCA. So if that's the case, well, I think it's FCA, then that's absolutely fine. But they know how to remedy the
Yeah.
problem.
Yeah.
And I will fight them myself, because they've already had one, they know what to do with it, so that's not my problem.
Yeah,
It's theirs.
yeah. Okay, right, this gentleman here.
I'm a little bit confused. As you're setting out a cheque and actually backing it up with a promissory note, a promise to pay.
You are, yes.
The bills of exchange and the promise to pay, you are looking to actually recover or pay down that amount of money over a period of time. It's a promise. It's to be honourable.
Yeah.
And what you're saying is if you go to a bank and I know you create the money,
Yeah.
and if they didn't do whatever they do, securitise it, and it would all work pretty much okay.
Yeah.
But they don't do that. However, you still have an obligation if you're actually taking out an asset and you're backing it up with your labour. If you're not backing it up with an asset, you're backing it up with your labour.
Yeah.
To write out a cheque and not promise to pay that over a period of time,
Yeah.
I can see where you're going with it, but I can also see how it's not going to be accepted and there'll be a sticking point because there isn't a payment medium back.
There is a payment method back. There's a double payment method back.
Well, what
Are you a member?
No, I'm not
Okay.
I'm not a member. I've had a look
Okay,
at the...
so what it stipulates is that the promissory note has a 10-year maturity. If we trade it or try and do anything with it on the markets, then your obligation on that note is extinct. It's extinguished. That prevents us monetizing it, trading it off onto the markets, and therefore putting you in what's almost a double jeopardy. We've made on it, and then the next party down the line is monetizing it. Right, so for the promise to be effective, it must have an intention or energy behind it. Because if you were ever making a promise that somebody could prove from day one you had no intention of keeping, then it would undermine the whole structure, and that would be fraud.
Correct.
So if somebody is coming along and placing a promissory note, and they're drawing down on that by signing instruments subtended from it, what we've got to make sure then is that they fulfill the obligation to top up or pay down on the note, right? And there's two ways that they do it, because on the promissory note it says you're signing the promissory note, which in fact is you're giving yourself that money, because we're not spending it for you, are we? We're not signing the checks, you're signing them yourself. You could sign one for 150, you could sign one or 150,000 of them for £1 each. So you're the banker on it. So on the promissory note pay down as well, we allow you to put funds in on the public side and also on the private side. Because you've also, on the promissory note, stated that we are providing, or you're providing 148,000 re. Yeah, because there are two currencies here. Are you aware of that?
Yes.
Yeah, okay. And the re has a payment value, we say, which is twice as strong as sterling. At the moment, people are starting even to trade in re. Now this is starting to happen in Germany, Austria and Switzerland more, because they've got a history of alternative currencies. But it's no different in principle what we're offering on the re side than it is with the Lambeth pound or the Bristol pound.
No, but what I'm saying is that where is your source of labour to put that back? You're either actually putting in cash to pay that back in, or you're putting in labour, or as a promise of...
Yeah, you're doing it on two sides of the accounting ledger. One on the private side, where it's got what's called transactions in on private. That means any work that you do, and you showed us that you have done that work, we credit, you enter it onto your back office ledger, and we credit that in as a payment onto your promissory note.
Right.
Both on that side and also on the public side, for allowing you to pay in on the side that you've been taxed on. So anything that's been taxed, anything that's been taken off you by the government, we're stating that that should not have been taken, and we're crediting that on the promissory note side. We're acting almost as an employment agency, because the big thing behind Weir Bank, it's a bank and an employer at the same time, like Adecco or like Manpower.
So you're actually backing it up with an instrument which is either yourself or money that you're actually
absolutely.
putting in. And you're not just having people who are just writing out cheques for no reason at all.
Absolutely
right.
not.
Well, I had this conversation with Peter last week that basically I took a screenshot of everything that I've paid out before the other one went down, and I've got on my backup for what I've done over the last year. So every month I go in and I've got the hour, or even weekly, I've got the hours that I've worked in the back office. So I've got a backup of that.
Yeah.
So
it's rest assured it will endure. Rest assured that you will see massive improvement on it when the new software platform gets put in place. It's a standard banking platform that we're going to be using from now on, and it's a carbon copy of what's used in many areas as well in financial commercial circles. So no, if we don't have the ability to fulfill on the promise, then it would be illegitimate, and it isn't. And that's why it works, and that's why no one has come, and no one will come from any organisation out there, whether it's belonging to the City of London fraud investigation, the SFO, or anywhere else, and bring any charges against me, because there are none to bring. It's open, it's transparent, it's legitimate, and we're coming up to our second year, and I thank all of those people out there that I have just mentioned for looking at us, investigating us, and giving us in effect the green light covertly to continue. And that's about it, because I've just been told I need to stop that, otherwise the other speakers won't be able to get in. Okay, thank you very much. I don't need any applause, but there you go. Thank you.
Debt Free TV, in association with GetOutOfDebtFree.org.